This is TWiT.
It turns out that IoT Lightbulb vulnerabilities are not such a joke after all. Our listeners know that I often joke about having our internal networks hacked and attacked by something as ridiculous seeming as a light bulb. I chose light bulbs, I guess, to receive that abuse over the general lack of attention to IoT security because they're pretty much the dumbest, lowest rung of the ladder and the least fancy IoT device we have. Well, turns out that the extremely popular Philips IoT light bulbs, the Philips Hue IoT light bulbs, or in this case, actually the bridge that's part of the Philips Hue system, and the light bulbs themselves, are able to, in combination, expose our internal Wi-Fi networks to bad guys. The Hacker News had some good coverage of this. They explained, they began by saying there are over 100 potential ways hackers can ruin your life by having access to your Wi-Fi network that's also connected to your computers, smartphones, and other smart devices. Right, we don't want bad guys on our Wi-Fi network. They said whether it's about exploiting operating system and software vulnerabilities or manipulating network traffic, every attack relies on the reachability between an attacker and the targeted devices. In recent years, they wrote, we've seen how hundreds of widely used smart but insecure devices made it easier for remote attackers to sneak into connected networks without breaking Wi-Fi passwords. In the latest research shared with the Hacker News, Check Point revealed a new high-security vulnerability affecting Philips Hue smart light bulbs that can be exploited over the air from over 100 meters away to gain entry into a targeted Wi-Fi network. The underlying high-severity vulnerability, which is tracked as CVE 2020-6007, resides in the way Philips implemented the ZigBee communication protocol in its smart light bulb. This leads to a heap-based buffer overflow. Whoops. So, okay, as we know, ZigBee is the widely used mesh wireless technology that allows each device in a ZigBee group to communicate with any other device on that network. And it's widely used. It's the protocol built into tens of millions of devices worldwide. The Amazon device, the Home Hub device, I'm reluctant to say the name because I don't want to set them off. Samsung's SmartThings, the Belkin Emo, and many more. Lots of devices use ZigBee. The Checkpoint researchers said, through this exploitation, a threat actor can infiltrate a home or office's computer network over the air, spreading ransomware or spyware by using nothing but a laptop and an antenna from over 100 meters away. They also confirmed that the buffer overflow happens on a component called the bridge, which is the module that receives remote commands sent to the bulb over the ZigBee protocol from other devices like a mobile app or the Amazon Home Assistant. Due to its severity, that is the severity of this problem that Checkpoint found, they have not revealed any technical details, nor are they providing any proof of concept for the flaw in order to give users some time to apply patches. But we have a blog from Checkpoint. Of course, they couldn't resist saying the dark side of smart lighting as the title for this. They wrote, with the help of the Checkpoint Institute for Information Security at Tel Aviv University, the researchers were able to take control of a Hue light bulb on a target network and install malicious firmware on it. From that point, they used the light bulb as a platform to take over the bulb's control bridge and attacked the target network. They said first, The attacker controls the bulb's color or brightness to trick users into thinking the bulb has a glitch. The bulb appears as unreachable in the user's control app, so they try to reset it. The only way to reset the bulb is to delete it from the app, then instruct the control bridge to rediscover the bulb. Apparently, it's that action of the rediscovery that allows the bulb to then attack the bridge, which has just rediscovered it. They wrote, the bridge discovers the compromised bulb and the user adds it back onto their network. The hacker-controlled bulb with updated firmware then uses the ZigBee protocol to trigger a heap-based buffer overflow on the control bridge by sending a large amount of data to it. This data enables the hacker to install their own malware onto the bridge, which is in turn connected to the target business or home network. Malware then connects back to the hacker, and using a known exploit like Eternal Blue or whatever, they're able to infiltrate the target IP network from the bridge to spread ransomware or spyware. So, this is a classic get in and then pivot attack. So the bad guys take control of the light bulb, install their malign firmware onto it, make the light bulb go crazy so that its owner thinks, what the hell, it's gone nuts. The owner deletes the bulb, re-adds the bulb to the system, and in that repairing process, the bulb is able to infiltrate the shared hub, get its malware then onto the hub, and the hub is now in a privileged position being part of the Wi-Fi network in order to exploit the internal network from its vantage point. And as I'm reading this, I'm thinking, wow, all this from somebody who wants to have Philips Hue smart light bulbs and control them using wireless technology. This research was first disclosed to Philips and Signify, who is the owner of the Philips Hue brand, last November, so a few months ago. Signify confirmed the existence of the vulnerability in their product, and after about 2 months, they issued a patched firmware version. So anybody who has Philips Hue bulbs are going to want to take note of this. You want to make sure this is the firmware you're using. It ends in 4040. That's the easy way to. It's firmware 1935144040.
And they do over-the-air updates, so the chances are you already do have it. You don't have to do anything.
Exactly. I was curious about that, so I wanted to make sure that was done. And there is meethue.com. Checkpoint said, in a joint decision with Signify, we decided to postpone the release of the full technical details of our research in order to allow Philips Hue clients to have enough time to safely update their products to the latest version. The full technical details of this research will only be published in our research blog in the upcoming weeks. Stay tuned. So anyway, I was curious to know, as you said, Leo, there is auto update to verify that. There apparently are two bridges. There's a version 1 bridge which is a rounded shaped bridge and they said round shaped bridge, and a version 2 which is a square shaped bridge, and that's the one that supports the Apple HomeKit. And they wrote on their page, if you don't want to miss any improvements on quality, security, or performance, and you want your Hue system fully compatible with the upcoming new Hue products, please be sure that you enable automatic updates for your Hue system in the Hue app. That's under Settings, Software Update, Automatic Update. And I presume that's the default setting, right, Leo? That it's
actually, I should check. That's what we've been saying, but I should check just to make sure.
Yeah, and on January 13th of 2020, so last month, almost a month ago, they said firmware 1935144040 for the version 2 bridge. They said we regularly update your Hue bridge to improve the performance and reliability of the system.
My bridge is up to
update,
date, and I didn't do anything, so yes.
Good. This update includes a patch for a security vulnerability in the Hue bridge version 2.
Make sure it says all your lights are powered on to get them up to date. It can take up to 1 hour per light or accessory to download, and lights may briefly turn off while updating.
Wow, well, that's cool.
What a world we live in, huh?
I know. Can you believe it, Leo? It's like, okay, turn on the lights and wait an hour.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm not surprised because it's going to be it's a low power,
right?
Bandwidth constrained protocol, and they're having to receive a firmware update through ZigBee. So it's going to take a while.
Yeah.
But I'm glad to know that the light bulb itself, not just the bridge, can be updated. That's a question I had, and I'm glad you answered it for us. Yeah. So,
and the weird thing is, this was a problem earlier. They didn't patch it correctly, apparently, and so it came back.
Whoopsie.
You should automatically be updated. And if you, for some reason, turned off auto updates, well, you might want to turn those back on.
Yeah. And so, the big takeaway here, and this perfectly factors into our next topic, our final discussion, the so-called SwainTooth vulnerabilities, which have just been disclosed. The utter importance that anything you have, which is IoT, has an upgrade path. I mean, I know that I always say this. There's typically some reason to bring it up every single week, but it is crucial that we have that. So, SwainTooth. The SwainTooth vulnerabilities are a set of more than 12 newly discovered and disclosed and notice I said more than 12 across a wide range of Bluetooth devices. Unfortunately, many of which will never be updated. I know. More than 480 individual products have been identified that are affected by this. These allow for, among other things, full device compromise. Only 12 of these vulnerabilities have been disclosed so far, since some Bluetooth vendors, as you might guess from SwainTooth, this is about Bluetooth, some Bluetooth vendors have not yet released updated SDKs, so more disclosures will be forthcoming. But let's back up a bit. First of all, I know everyone is thinking, SwainTooth? The etymology of SwainTooth is not as immediately obvious as are many other named vulnerabilities. In this case, SwainTooth was formed from the names of Swain Forkbeard and his father, King Harold Bluetooth.
Yeah, King Harold was the Bluetooth. Yeah. So it's a Bluetooth's son.
Turns out that King Harold Bluetooth, of course, being the namesake of our widely used Bluetooth technology, he was exiled by his upstart son, Swain.
Don't you know?
Who revolted against his father, exiled King Harold, and shortly thereafter, the king died.
Oh, no.
So, yes, SwainTooth. The discoverers of these vulnerabilities wrote that they, quote, envision that if SwainTooth-style vulnerabilities are not appropriately handled by BLE, Bluetooth Low Energy, vendors, then the technology can become a breeding ground for attackers, which may in turn lead the Bluetooth technology to become obsolete. I doubt that Bluetooth is going to become obsolete, but this is going to be a serious problem. Their paper, SwainTooth, Unleashing Mayhem over Bluetooth.
Oh, no.
I love that. I love the word mayhem is one of my favorite words. Mayhem. That's such a great word. Unleashing Mayhem over Low-Tooth Blue Energy. I've got a link to the disclosures that are posted on GitHub, a link to their 11-page PDF, which is a partial disclosure because they still have not heard from some of the Bluetooth vendors. They start off their paper explaining SwainTooth captures a family of 12 vulnerabilities, more under non-disclosure, across different BLE software development kits of 7 major system-on-a-chip SoC vendors. The vulnerabilities expose flaws in specific BLE SoC implementations that allow an attacker within radio range to trigger deadlocks, crashes, and buffer overflows, or completely bypass security, Bluetooth security, depending upon the circumstances. SwainTooth potentially affects IoT products in appliances such as smartphones, wearables, and environmental tracking or sensing. They said, we have also identified several medical and logistics products that could be affected. There was one from Medtronics that I saw. As of today, they wrote, SwainTooth vulnerabilities are found in the BLE SDKs sold by major SoC vendors. And so when I was reading this, I was hoping these were going to be kind of obscure, never really heard about them, don't know who they are, so not a big deal. TI, NXP, that of course is used to be Philips, Cypress, Dialog Semi, Microchip, ST Microelectronics, and Telink Semiconductor, all major suppliers of Bluetooth SoC, system-on-a-chip devices. By no means this list of SoC vendors is exhaustive, they wrote, in terms of being affected by SwainTooth. We have followed responsible disclosure during our discovery, which allowed almost all SoC vendors to publicly release their respective patches already. However, a substantial number of IoT products relying on the affected SoCs for BLE connectivity will still need to independently receive patches from their respective vendors, as long as a firmware update mechanism is supported by the vendor. SwainTooth highlights concrete flaws in the Bluetooth Low Energy Stack certification process. We envision substantial amendments to the BLE stack certification to avoid SwainTooth-style security flaws in the future. We also urge SoC vendors and IoT product manufacturers to be aware of such security issues and to initiate focused effort in security testing. A proper classification of the vulnerability set is presented in the next section. And I'll mention briefly, they've got crash, where vulnerabilities in this category can remotely crash a device by triggering hard faults. They said this happens due to some incorrect code behavior or memory corruption. For example, when a buffer overflow or Bluetooth low energy reception buffer occurs. When a device crash occurs, they usually restart. However, such a restart capability depends on whether a correct hard fault handling mechanism was implemented in the product that uses the vulnerable BLE SoC. Second classification, deadlock. Deadlocks are vulnerabilities that affect the availability of the Bluetooth low energy connection without causing a hard fault or memory corruption. Usually they occur due to some improper synchronization between user code and the SDK firmware distributed by the system-on-a-chip vendor, leaving the user code being stuck at some point. Crashes originated from hard faults if not properly handled, and can become a deadlock if the device is not automatically restarted. In most cases, when a deadlock occurs, the user is required to manually power off and power on the device to reestablish proper communication. In other words, a deadlock kills the Bluetooth low energy device without the user interceding and shutting it down and powering it back up again, which of course still leaves it prone to reattack. And finally, security bypass. This vulnerability is the most critical one, they wrote. This is because the vulnerability allows attackers in radio range to bypass the latest secure pairing mode of Bluetooth Low Energy, i.e. the secure connections pairing mode. After the bypass is completed, an attacker within radio range has arbitrary read and write access to the device's functions which are only intended to be accessed by authorized user. So yes, a complete bypass of BLE Bluetooth security, essentially by forcing a pairing of a malicious device with the Bluetooth device. This led to a raft of CVEs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yep, all 12 of them are there, affecting different of the devices in different ways. They have in their report a table of vulnerabilities and SDK versions of the affected system-on-a-chip devices. And they're listed. I'm looking at Cypress, at TI, at ST Micro, at NXP, at Texas Instruments, Microchip. I mean, they're all there. So the problem we face here is the nature of the Bluetooth consumer device chain. We're talking about the suppliers of the original silicon way at the start of the chain. They have this silicon. They provide a software development kit where the engineers who are then customizing the system on a chip, integrating it into their solution, are using the Bluetooth software stack that was provided by the system on a chip vendor, the BLE vendor, which is ended up being, it gets burned into the firmware of the product, which is to say that every single Bluetooth device from these companies has these vulnerabilities. And the sad truth of today's supply chain is most of these will never be updated. By far and away, most Bluetooth-enabled devices are not our mainstream smartphones and, for example, home hubs or the Philips Hue hub and bulbs, which I'm glad to find out were updated. They're not, most Bluetooth-enabled devices are not part of an active ecosystem. And notice that you have to have some way of talking to the device. I mean, our smartphones and our home hubs and things like the Bluetooth, well, those are tied into Wi-Fi, which are tied into the internet that gives them a means of getting themselves updated. But we've got Bluetooth stuff all over the place, which doesn't have a means of getting connected to the internet. Most of them will never see a firmware update. And even if one was available on some, Chinese website vendor, retailer somewhere, how would we, the user, ever know that it was even there? So imagine some random Bluetooth low energy based corporate or residential alarm system that was purchased through Amazon from, typically these days, a Chinese vendor that used a Bluetooth low energy chip from Cypress, TI, NXP, Microchip, or apparently any of the other still not even named vendors. We know that original manufacturer doesn't care about after-sales support. You bought it, it was cheap, good luck. No after-sales support is even offered. So that alarm system is now highly unlikely to ever receive a firmware update. It works, yes, but it will also be forever vulnerable. Forever is the key word. Forever vulnerable to wireless proximity attacks that will eventually be made fully public. And in the specific case of an alarm system, It doesn't need to be vulnerable to the least common of those attacks, which was the full security bypass. It might be sufficient for an attacking burglar's purpose to create a deadlock so that it is unable to sound the alarm. But if a security bypass can be found, even more damage could probably be done. And we've all seen science fiction where, for example, as with Neo at the start of The Matrix, some lesser skilled individuals are purchasing some advanced hacking technology from him, a more highly skilled hacker. I've always regarded this sort of world as more fanciful than real. That is, the idea that anything can be hacked for a price. But it's becoming increasingly clear that the way things are going, the fundamentally insecure way that we are now cavalierly and casually purchasing, deploying, using, and relying upon technology can be hacked, and in cases like this will be forever known to be hackable. This really does suggest a brave new world where anything can be hacked for a price. You know, and like imagine the phone rings and the hacker says, "Hey, what's up? Oh, you want to bypass a Chimera 412 home alarm system? Sure, piece of cake. Those use the old Cypress 2313 BLE chip that its manufacturer never updated. The hack for that's been around forever. But mine adds a few extra touches. Transfer 1/10 of a Bitcoin to my wallet, and once it's there, I'll shoot you a script that you can run on any rooted Android smartphone that'll completely and silently shut down any Chimera 412.
You don't think that's happening?
Probably is. Yeah. In some places. Yeah. Probably already
I don't think
is.
It's that
You're right.
far-fetched, really.
You know?
There's money out there.
That's the world we are in. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. The knowledge is there. Hackers are there. We know that there's an underground world. We now have a means of transferring funds in a way that is essentially untraceable.
I mean, I think most hackers are honorable, believe it or not. But I think that we've heard that organized crime has started using hackers for hire. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, all it would take is a small percentage of the total hacking community to be problem.
And my point is, it's not just big things like, RDP servers that we can even, we're able to count those. You can't even count the number of Bluetooth low energy devices that are now floating around the world being used and which are now known to be vulnerable and are never going to be updated.